Hi folks, welcome to IMB Magazine. My name is Clive Forth from MTB Skills and you're joining us for the Skills and Technique feature. Each issue we're going to be looking at different techniques and the core skills to riding mountain bikes. So sit back and relax and enjoy. Hi, welcome back then folks. Well, spring has finally sprung and it's creeping its way through the United Kingdom. We've got some great colours coming on here in Scotland. Still playing catch up with you guys down south. How is it in the rest of the world? It's good to be back doing another instalment of our Skills and Technique, and this time we're going to be looking at contact patches and just some real subtlety in the techniques that we use when we're doing the classic trail skills of wheeling, manualing, hopping, dropping and jumping, as well as obviously cornering. So contact patches, what do I mean when I talk about our contact patches? Well, we've got hand on bar, so our grips is a contact patch. We've got the bum on the saddle when we're climbing, that's another contact patch. We've got the foot on the pedal, and then we've got the tyre on the trail. So those are the key contact patches that we're going to look at and just give you some subtle insight into some advanced technique of what we're doing with the hands and the wrists and the way that we're using the handlebar, what we're doing in the saddle when we're traversing and climbing, and then what we're doing in your footwork, rolling the foot inside the shoe, dropping the heel, lead foot, switching out the lead foot and so on, and then what's happening with terra firma, what's happening underneath the tyre. How does that contact patch change as we lean the bike in the corners, and what happens when we're up on that one wheel, maybe on the flat, maybe in a climb, or on a corner as well. Sometimes you end up on the one wheel as well. So let's get into it. So we'll kick off with cornering. What's happening in cornering then in terms of our contact patches? Well, as you know already from watching and reading the previous stuff, we want to be doing more leaning than steering in corners. Obviously, if it's very, very slow speed, you'll be turning the handlebar more. But when you've got a bit more speed, as we have in this downhill corner, you're going to be leaning the bike a lot more. So that can be done through pressure through the outside part of the palm. You try not to pull up on the bar too much. It's more about dropping this inside part of the bar in and then dealing with the pressures as you push out and resist that pressure with the other arm in the corner and essentially counterbalancing your own force as you're in the corner, trying to get the front, your other contact patch, obviously the front tyre, as it's turning and biting on the knobbles coming into the surface. By leaning, you're using that contact patch of the tyre to get onto the edge of the tyre so it digs into the trail. But something that might happen in a corner like this where it's loose to start with is you need to work hard with the footwork as well. So this could be a point where you drop the outside foot. You might want to run cranks level, but if you move in towards the ball of the foot, you'll wind up more pressure. The knee comes in towards the frame, twist the hips in. That's all going in the direction of the corner, this one being a left-hander. And that will roll your foot, and that rolling of the foot increases the pressure. Obviously nothing going on through the saddle. We're stood up out of the saddle at this point. If you've got the dropper, you've got the saddle drops, you've got loads of room down here to lean the bike below you. And with this particular turn, we've got a crag in here. So it may be as you run over that, the wheels come light and you end up just on the one wheel. So now you've reduced your contact patch on the tyres massively because you're now no longer on two tyres, you're just on the one tyre. So you're thinking about how the bike's going to steer off the rear wheel while the front wheel's in the air and it's leaning. The arms are going to be pulling up on the bar to assist with that manual if you want to sustain it. But you're working your feet harder to keep the back end gripped and really using the hips and the leg work to steer the bike as you continue out through the rest of the corner. Okay, so let's get a look at one of our key contact patches in a bit more detail and just do a little bit on this. So I like to use a tyre that's relatively fast rolling. Essentially, I'm lazy. I don't want to be slogging away, driving big heavy tyres around. I would rather sacrifice the grip when it gets damp and loamy and soft and mushy and have a faster rolling tyre, because a lot of our stuff up here in Scotland is hard pack as well. So, you know, we're on very mixed terrain, and as I say, sacrifice the grip in the soft and go for something that's slightly faster rolling. It's not too rounded in its profile as a tyre, and it does give me a good, decent square edge, as much as those knobbles aren't that pronounced. A tall knobble's obviously going to roll and flex, very poor on hard pack surfaces, but really good in the soft surfaces. And a very rounded profile tyre, I remember some of the old brands, they were very sort of circular in their profiles. They would really want to wash out on you super quick. You couldn't really feel the edge and get any bite on the edge of the tyre. So you'll see with these knobbies, they're taller on the outside edge than they are on their inside, and that gives it quite a pronounced sharp edge. The vast majority of manufacturers are really good at giving you a guide as to whether this tyre is suitable for loose over hard pack or this type of terrain. But it is something worth experimenting with. I'm running the same front and back. That just is a combo that works for me, as does my wife. She runs a similar tyre, but the same tyre, front and back. You may end up mixing them up, running something slightly more aggressive on the front, because that feeling of the front washing away from you is a little bit more unnerving than when the back breaks away and becomes loose. But that's the point, is this is our contact patch in the turns, and this is what we've got to get the bike onto in the corners. If we don't get it leant over, then it's not going to bite. Right, so you've just seen me getting warmed back up again. Unfortunately, we've lost the sun, so Dan's and me pedalling up and down here, riding this section. What was going on in that section and in relation to our contact patches? Well, this is interwheeling, we're climbing. We're needing to lift the front wheel up onto an over stuff so that we're not just hitting it and stalling out on it. So predominantly, we want to look at what we're doing in the saddle. So we're seated. When we get that wheelie come in, we can still stay seated, but it's at that point almost, because, you know, there's a short gap between the front and rear wheel, so it's not long before the rear wheel is going to contact that feature, and it's at that point particularly that we need to be up out of the saddle. What we don't want to do is be a dead weight sat on the bike, pushing it in. As the back wheel hits that root or that rock, it's just going to want to stall out, squat the bike. Even with a hardtail, it's going to stall it further and hold and hang you in there. You want to be light, so you want to come up out of the saddle, and it's not particularly high. You're only just hovering on top of the saddle, you know, a little bit of daylight between you and the saddle, and it allows the bike just to pop up onto that feature, be it rock up here or root down there, and you just carry that little bit more momentum. Keep driving the cranks around, obviously. In the wheelie itself, obviously, go back to our earlier lessons on that. We're pushing down hard on the power, on the pedal stroke to induce that front wheel lift, and our grips, this contact patch here, we're doing just a little bit of lifting just to pick the front wheel up. Again, it's handy if you can lift that front contact patch up onto and over the root or onto the rocks there, rather than just colliding into it. Right, so we come to look at another feature. We're talking about hopping, and in this situation you can either hop or you can bonk off of this feature. Contact patches, so obviously our tyre is one of those contact patches, and it's whether we want to feel the interference from the trail. We've got sufficient speed, we're not climbing, so we're carrying sufficient momentum through here. Do we want to just plough through that and feel that through the contact patch and take that hit? Do we want to work with that and bonk off of it and allow that hit to send us airborne? Or do we want to eliminate that altogether and avoid that contact patch of tyre on terrain and eliminate it totally by hopping over it? It's all situation dependent, of course. And so my first run that we've seen, we bonk off of that. We actually use the feature and feel our way. So I'm feeling the hit and reacting with it. So what's going on with the bars then, my contact patch and my hands on my grips, is initially I'm going to take that hit into this part of the hand, but from that I can react and drive the bike out forwards using that contact patch to push the bar out forwards. What's going on with the footwork? Well, we get a little bit of compression as we come through, and we work with that with a little dropping of the heels and pressuring down into the pedals. So thinking about our contact patch of our feet, pushing into the pedals, waiting for the rear wheel to hit, and again feeling the contact patch of the back tyre hit into this old dead log here and pop us up and out. We go for the hop in the other shot. So the hop is all about preloading the bike here to get that release. So again, contact patches, loading the bike up inevitably through its tyres into the terrain, pressing down, feeling for any other little undulations that may work with or against me, and reacting to those, whether that's by pressuring in to get some pump and some squeeze, or whether it's rising up a little lighter to avoid that hit stalling me up a little bit. And then when it's in the air, we're driving it forwards in the midpoint of the bunny hop. So that's again using this part of the palm, pushing and driving the bike out. Similarly with the footwork, as we did when we bonked through it, we're compressing the bike, dropping the heels, and then springing upwards. And it's that springing upwards that gives us the rear wheel lift, and in this situation avoiding hitting the log, so we clear it. And again, there is a little bit of pulling the legs up and through forwards as the bike comes out front. Now that midpoint in the bunny hop, when you're at this point here, you've got to catch the bike back up. So what's going on with our grip is we're into fingertip grips and it's not bringing the bike into us as such, it's more us moving up and forwards to catch up with the bike and be back in the center of the bike, ready to put it back down. Righty-ho, so jump in then. Contact patches, what's happening? Well, the trail itself in these situations actually does a lot of the work for us. So when you're coming into a jump face, automatically pressure is increased. There is a bit of talk about you load the bike up in the jump face, and it's all dependent upon the shape and style of that jump face. If they're very tight, then nature's doing the work for you anyway. As you come into that, pressure's created. You don't really need to add to that. You need to react to that and help smooth that out. If it's a very mellow shape, as with these beginner jumps here, there's not a lot of pressure created as you come into that. It's much less. So you can use your body and your pressure, your contact points, to increase that load ever so slightly, because it's that load that helps you rebound from. But we don't want to rebound too early and exit the transition of the jump before we've come out the lip of the jump. We want to relax through that, and just we're controlling that pressure. So with our contact patches, you may feel a slight dropping of the heels. With the arms, you'll just try to help the bike manage its shape through there. So there's very little pressure going on with our contact patch through the bar at our point of takeoff. Obviously, nothing happening with the saddle, that's dropped with the dropper post, or if you're on your jump bike, it's dropped below anyway. With the tyres, well, they're just feeling, that contact patch of the tyre is feeling an increase in pressure as those forces are combining, of you moving forwards into that upslope shape. So you may find the tyre deforms and wants to squirm about, and you'll see in some of the videos where people have got it wrong that their takeoff angle and shape isn't particularly pretty. Now that's either that they're leaning their bodies in odd manners and putting odd pressures through contact points, or it's that the contact point of the tyre has deformed and therefore the bike's moved. It's kind of squirmed. So if you run very low tyre pressures, that's something to be mindful of when you're hitting into jumps. So that's talking about the setup through the transition of the jump. What happens as we float out of the lip of the jump and we're now airborne? Well, again, we're in a similar shape to the bunny hop, aren't we? That midpoint of the bunny hop where we need to accelerate the bike forwards out in front of us to get the back to come up and level up. And that's really done through this part of the wrist and the grip on the bar. It's that thumb hook that helps level the bike up, bringing it up, driving it out and forwards. So we're all back to this part of the hand again. Our contact patch here is the bit that's working for us. It can be quite loose in our finger gripping. We're not really biting in on the grip here. You can actually cover the brakes, obviously, while you're in the air, and people take hands off in the air, don't they? So, you know, at that point, the shape's already made with that thrusting out. On the pedals, contact patch on the pedals, we've gone from pressure in and loading it up, and we're now at a pressure out scenario, and we need to bring the legs up into the body, remember? If we maintain too much pressure on the pedal, the bike's not going to rise up and come level. And again, there's a slight moving forwards of the legs. They come up through the body and put the bike in front. Nothing then happening until landing. And when we land, we're ready to absorb the landing. And so we're going to feel more pressure up through the body at that point. And that's then when you want to be not totally over the top of the bar and out the front. You still want to be always behind the bar, and you're getting ready to feel that pressure through your contact point of your grip as it pushes up in, transferring that load up through the arms, elbows out, using the shoulders to absorb the landing. And with your feet, you're driving the legs down to get the bike back down to the ground, and you're obviously going to feel pressure through the pedals. Now, again, if you watch videos where people get it wrong, one of those common things that happens in the landing side of things, the misplaced foot on the pedal, they blow a foot off of the pedal, they maybe toe down on the landing, go through all those old bits of footage, look at those videos, you'll see all of those bits we're talking about where people get it wrong, and the feet get blown off of the pedal. Right, so last but not least, we just have a quick look at the drop off. We've covered these before in previous features, so if you want all the ins and outs of the techniques, go back through the back issues and look up the drop off. We're focusing on the contact points in this particular feature. So what's going on with our contact points on the drop off? Not hugely dissimilar to the jump, to be perfectly honest. If we're running a low tyre pressure, there's the tyre deforming, and that may make the bike squirm and send you at odd angles. So it's dead important to get yourself lined up nice and square and deal with any interference before the drop. Be the same on the landing off the drop, your contact patch of your tyre on the deck. If there's interference in there, things to clip that are going to send you odd trajectories, you need to be preempting that and ideally trying to land somewhere clean. But if you're landing on odd angles and odd shapes, there might be some roots down there or something, you just need to preempt that and anticipate what direction that's going to send the bike. Adapting that tire pressure and playing with that contact patch. Is it going to be a bigger tire to help soak it up, and we're going to run a softer pressure? Will I run a tire insert which will enable me to run a softer pressure but without denting the rim? Is all entirely up to you and the type of terrain that you're riding. Obviously the saddle's down, there's no contact going on there at all. Through our footwork, we're lowering ourselves into the bike. We may want to be a bit light foot to deal with rough stuff and undulations and let the bike make its way over those shapes, or we may want to be pressured in to eliminate a knobble or an edge or an upslope at the edge of the drop, because remember, we want to go downwards in a triangulated shape. We don't really want to be going up when the terrain's going down. So if there's a lump there, you might have to just squeeze the bike through that, and by that I mean dropping the heel and pressuring in through the foot to push the bike through that. Unlike our little sort of bonk that we did earlier when we went over the log, drive the bike through that. With the arms from that low position, our contact patch through the grip, we're driving the bike out in front of us. We need to go from centered and accelerate it out in front. And again, we're back to this part of the grip. Okay, there's a lot goes on with that joint of the thumb where we drive the bike out in front. In the air, the bike's now accelerated out in front of us. We need to catch it up. So we're using our fingertip grip, and we're going to catch up with the bike in the air. The footwork, the foot rolls on the pedal, get back up into the center of the bike, and as it comes down, same as with the jump, we're going to absorb that landing behind the bar, absorbing it through this part of the hand again in here, taking that shock up the arms, down the elbows to work and flex, taking the load into the shoulders. Not wanting the nodding dog, you've got to use those neck muscles back here to keep the head up and looking ahead up the trail. You see people land things and drop the head in. That's no good. That's going to stall you out. You can't see what's ahead. So you've got to use these muscles up here to look through the drop. But the contact points behind the bar, fingertip grip, and then behind the bar again, taking that load up through there. Well, that's about it for this time round. We'll think of some more things to look at in the future, some of the intricacies of the skills and techniques, and obviously we'll revisit some of the classics and the usual how-tos on all the core basics, your usual stuff of cornering, wheeling, dropping, jumping, manualing. So for more, tune in next time, folks. Take care.